1. Welcome to Made for More Living.
One small step for man.
With Johnny Jennings.
Kick the tires and light the fires, Big Daddy.
The fastest and most exciting hour of news, events, and real estate in Northern California.
And this is a fact that was proved.
Powered by EXP Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Get ready. Here we go.
So there's this new phenomenon taking over, just taking the world by storm. Granted, I'm from a small town. This is new to me. There wasn't even a mall in my town when I grew up. We were lucky when we got the big K, the big Kmart. And so anyways, I'm walking in the mall and I'm like, there's all these people walking past me and they're like wearing like suits and shoes, like jogging suits and shoes. I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I told Valerie about it and she's like, Johnny, oh my gosh. That's a thing. It's been around for a long time.
Right.
It's called mall walkers.
Yeah, different than The Walking Dead, the show on AMC.
Yeah. And
You've never heard of mall walkers before?
Man, where I was from, it was kind of cool if you went cow tipping, okay? So for those of you who don't know what cow tipping is, Google it. It's not the nicest thing to do to cows. But
so what should we do tonight? We go walk the mall or go tip a cow?
Yep. So, but in the studio today, we have Ryan Lundquist. If there was a rock star appraiser, somebody that shows up in a limo with fur coats, it'd be Ryan Lundquist.
Wow,
he's
that's
a
an
legend
interesting
here
picture.
locally. I mean, just envision it. You can see it. You can see it if you see this guy.
Yeah, no, I may be Ryan. I don't have that Ryan Gosling, fur coat Barbie look though.
Yeah,
so just
maybe.
to
Hey,
clarify.
maybe you can replace him in the sequel. But what we were talking about off the air was how you enjoy mall walking.
I do. And, it's relevant. My wife and I do the Citrus Heights Mall, and we join, Esther and Irma and, all the mall walkers. And, the reality is it's a reflection of fires.
Yeah.
We really didn't do that last year because we didn't have much of a fire season, but the mall is the perfect place to walk indoors when you can't exercise outdoors. And so I just want to say the pro tip, do it if needed.
Are you there early in the morning waiting for them to open the doors? Like, let us in. We need to get our steps in.
No. We don't do that. I think that the mall actually does open the mall early for these
really?
people,
They
which is really cool. So VIPs, really.
So how many steps are you getting into the mall? Like, how many laps are you doing?
Okay, so I think I did 5 miles in there before.
Wow, really?
But
You're doing 5 miles in the mall? That's amazing.
It's honestly really hard to do that. It's hard for me in the neighborhood to do that too because it gets dull when you're just walking on concrete. Like,
yeah.
If I'm walking on the American River trails, I can, that's fine.
You zone out. It's beautiful. Things to distract you.
Very tough on just concrete or asphalt though.
Interesting.
Because you can't run in the mall. You can only fast walk, right?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. Maybe you can. I'm not sure what the rules are,
Anyway, so Ryan is a local appraiser. He's the guy, so many realtors. Like, I don't know a realtor who doesn't reach out to Ryan when they have a question. In fact, you helped us out recently. This was a stat that people are talking about more with the National Association of Realtors, the whole lawsuit. And there was a client who was selling a luxury property and was wondering, well, hey, how many people are actually still paying buyer commissions? And you pulled some numbers that just in 5 minutes that were absolutely very revealing about what this has to do in our industry. And it was over 90% of people are paying 2.5% on a luxury listing. So a lot of people say, hey, my house is worth $500,000. I don't want to pay so much. But there's people $1 million, $2 million, $3 million paying a lot of money. Did that surprise you to see that percentage, or?
Not really. I mean, first, I'm careful about that conversation because, oh man, it can be a hot mess online. But I do have access to those stats right now. That'll change in about a month when the lawsuit kicks in, and those stats won't even be in MLS anymore. But they're there now, and I have pulled some stuff. I've just haven't really shared it publicly because it just starts to be a volcano of conversations.
It's a volcano. Yeah, we don't need to go down that road. But it's just interesting how quickly and how fast you're able to pull stats. That was my big takeaway because when an agent reached out, actually, do you know how long we've known each other?
I don't know. It seems like a while.
It's been a while.
I knew you pre-kids.
Pre-kids, yes. Not pre-Valerie, but pre-kids. So Valerie and I, when we moved here in 2018.
Oh, that's right.
We were with a different brokerage, and there was a lot of heat about that brokerage. And I stumbled across your blog, and I was like, man, this guy is like really smart. And so I reached out to you, and you picked up the phone, and you were texting me back, and you were consummate professional, and I was like, this dude's really cool. And since then, we've always stayed in touch, and I've always respected your work because you take a nonpartisan stance. You're not like, hey, doomsday, hey, this is great. It's like, these are the numbers. I don't have a crystal ball, but this is the story the numbers are telling right now. And that's kind of the thread you've taken over the course of your career, correct?
Oh, absolutely. There's no sense in being caught up in sensationalism, really in anything, in politics and real estate. It just so often it doesn't pan out. And so it's like all these issues that people have their panties in a wad, this week about people are angry. Then I'm like, man, if you're not going to be angry about it in 30 days, like, why are you causing a fuss right now?
That's really the point.
And really the same thing in real estate. I think people get sidetracked and start inflaming some stats that don't really mean anything. So we've got to look and go, what's the real story? What's going on? That's the numbers always matter.
So what are some stats that you see a lot of people typically get fired up about?
Well, I think that when people see a rise in foreclosures, and it's almost at nothing still. 1% of sales were distressed. They were foreclosures or short sales during the first quarter. And that's 1% of a very small number of sales. And so I think that people look at a rise, though, technically over the past couple of years and, start inflaming that and going, oh, we're all going to die, and going, okay, wait, hold on. We need some more context. But I don't know. There's always something every week. There's something new that, to be worried about, to be concerned about, whether in life or real estate. And, we just have to be careful about that stuff.
I agree. But I hear that conversation all the time with sellers and, more importantly, not importantly, but more specifically, buyers. They're like, hey, mortgage or foreclosures are up, short sales are up. I'm going to wait so I can get a deal. And it's like, are they? And then let's say the foreclosures are up. Let's say the world does come to an end. Who do you think you're going to be competing against? Like, there's a bunch of hedge funds. That's another thing that you talk about frequently too. Are the hedge funds? Bunch of hedge funds that would be interested in potentially buying here. There's a lot of local investors that would be interested in buying. And then there's the regular market that if prices do come down, they're going to want to jump in. So
definitely. Yeah. And relating to that, there's this stat that's been going around. It's even been shared by politicians, congressmen, and it's embarrassing that, they say that 44% of all sales have been from, these big institutions. And I don't know who invented this, but it's total fiction. And you could see, last year when you're looking at all sales, it's less than 1%, right? Now, in some markets, in Atlanta and different places, it is a higher percentage, but it's total fiction to embrace this idea that Wall Street is literally buying everything. And not to minimize our concern, but we've just got to have, I think, concern in the proper context when we're actually looking at numbers rather than some narrative that some, bro invented that's been perpetuated even in Congress. So
in Sacramento, what's the percentage?
So I don't have a percentage. But I would say probably less than 2%. The biggest owner of properties is Invitation Homes, and they definitely own multiple thousands of properties, but they're also not in a place where they've purchased in recent years. The last sale that I saw them buy was about 2 years ago exactly.
And, really?
Yeah, really. And the bulk of what they bought was 2012 and years subsequent to that, right? Mm-hmm. Now it's startling though. I actually made a map a few months back, and it shows the where these properties are owned, and it's wild because it's not dispersed throughout the whole market. It's really in a lot of first-time buyer neighborhoods, and so and so even when you look at locally, you do the percentage, whatever that percentage is. It's not in Granite Bay and the same in Roseville, and you start to look in South Sac, and you start to look, in maybe first-time buyer price points, and go, okay, wow, it's a lot more concentrated there. And you look at California, it's nowhere in the middle. It's basically Sacramento and above, and then Southern California. And so,
I don't get that. I love the Central Valley, but nobody wants to.
Sorry, man. You guys don't have malls.
We don't have malls.
It's the problem.
There are some malls. It's not where I was from.
You guys are more interested in cow tipping. So there's some problems.
Well, that there is those multi-billionaire companies that are purchasing that property. I think it's in Solano.
In Fairfield, yeah.
Fairfield, yeah. So, they're trying to have you heard about that?
I have.
Developing
People always
a micro city.
Yeah, that their property values are going up. That's why we need to list higher than what the market suggests, because someday that city's going to get built. So I have that's the engagement I've had with it is people are expecting their property values to go up right now because someday that city's going to get built.
Would you consider that the Central Valley?
No.
Okay.
I would
Bay
probably
Area.
say
That's Bay Area.
Yeah, Bay Area.
It's Solano. Yes, Solano is definitely Bay Area.
Yeah.
So what I would consider Central Valley, this is just my personal opinion, would probably start somewhere in like Lodi, Stockton, south, down to like Bakersfield. But I don't even consider Sacramento. Some people consider Sac to be part of the Central Valley, but not my perspective.
I think most locals would say NorCal, but for us.
There you go, NorCal. But speaking of, so we're talking about the hedge funds. It's only about 2% here locally. And then as far as cash buyers, we're hearing a lot of people say, hey, cash buyers are buying everything up. I can't compete if I'm getting a loan because I'm getting beat out by so-and-so. What do those numbers look like?
So in the region as a whole, when you consider Sac, Placer, Yolo, El Dorado, and our 4 counties, it's really about 20% of sales so far in 2024. And so, and that's a little bit higher than usual. But I think that speaks to, mortgage rates are higher and who can participate in the market and who's less sensitive to 7% rates. People with cash.
But also, like you said, it's about 20%. What's normal?
Well, I mean, normal. What is normal anymore, John? So, I think in a normal year, it might be closer to 15% or so.
Okay.
And so it's a little bit more elevated. But, you look in like Placer and El Dorado, and Nevada has the most cash, just above 30%. But Placer and El Dorado are typically flirting with somewhere around 23 to 25%. And so it just depends. There's more cash at higher prices compared to lower prices. You look above $1 million, and that's more like about 33% of all sales above $1 million. And so, again, it's not like dispersed throughout the whole entire market. First-time buyers, more FHA there, more VA there, but just not the vibe with cash sprinkled throughout the market. Yeah,
totally get what you're saying, though. It's interesting that the higher price markets are cash, or higher price homes are cash. But that's the experience. That's what we've experienced as well. Like they won't even get an appraisal. They're like, "This is the home I want. Like I don't care necessarily what it's appraised for, but I think it's worth this much. I'm selling my other home that's worth this much, and I'm paying cash for this property, and I'm interested in it." And so it's less about the comps, and it seems to be more about what the buyer sees in that home, rather than the more subdivision type areas. Those are based heavily on comps. Are you seeing something similar? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think sometimes, a cash buyer with fat stacks will, simply, pay and say, I need this house.
Yeah.
You look at Jay-Z and Beyonce, they paid $200 million for a house in California, and maybe it was 205, 210, whatever the number was. And, I don't know. Did they get an appraisal? Probably not. Who knows? But,
you didn't do that appraisal?
I did not.
You had to pass on it. You were booked.
I would be like Jay-Z. I really like your music, but I'm not the guy for that. I don't know that market. So
all right. So we've talked about hedge funds and we've talked about cash buyers, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the Bay Area buyer. How many people are actually moving from the Bay and buying homes in the Sacramento region?
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
It just seems like I have a burning question for the two of you guys. Like, how much work is too much and how much is not enough? Because I was talking to somebody recently and they're like, well, I need more work-life balance. I need more time off. And I'm thinking to myself, from my perspective, you work Monday through Friday. You have 2 days off every single week and every evening off. Like I have not had evenings and weekends off in 10 years.
See, there's a difference. You, I would consider, are an entrepreneur. You're a business owner. So you never have any time off. You are working 24/7. 365 days a week to some extent.
Yeah.
It's always on top of your mind. You're always got your phone out. You're always working. I would say for people like myself or, the average state worker, since we have it's 1/5 of our population here in Sacramento.
Sure.
It's supposed to be a Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5 gig.
But then they have a lot of time off and then they have vacations and all this stuff. And then there's holidays. Like I looked it up in the US, there's currently 11 holidays like 11 days in addition to your nights and weekends,
Sure.
in addition to your paid vacation. Like how much, like Brian, what do you, like, and now they're pushing like
The 32-hour work week.
32-hour work. So it used to be like 6 days a week in the Bible, and then what was you were telling me after
In the
World War
40s,
II?
it was 6 days a week, and then I think it was in the 40s or 50s they mixed it up to a 5-day work week, which is funny because if you did interviews with certain people, they're like, "Well, what are we supposed to do with our extra day off?" They were really perplexed on. Wait a minute, this is too much time off.
That's the question I'm asking. But then now they're wanting to do like a 32-hour work week, right? Like sometimes when I come drive downtown, I prefer to make my trips down on Friday because there's less traffic on the freeway. Because
It's true.
People
It's
just
true.
are not driving. But like, what are your thoughts, Ryan?
I don't know. All I got to say is that I am not going to struggle with figuring out what to do when
you have
am
more
not
time off?
working, because I'm like, hey, what woodworking project am I going to do today, or where am I going to go? And
Yeah, you have some cool hobbies.
oh, for sure, man. And I don't anticipate that being a struggle. I'll miss some aspects of work, I think, like anyone. But
But most people, they just sit around and like watch TV.
It's
Like,
true.
They go home and they watch TV. And so it's like, so what are you going to, so we have washing machines to wash the clothes. We have dishwashers to wash the dishes. I don't know about you guys, but I pay a guy to do my lawn, right?
Right.
And so it's like, these are things that people used to do in their spare
It's true.
time.
Good point. Yeah.
And now you're just going to go home and watch, like you have an extra day to watch TV.
Right.
Like, I don't understand what people, like what are you going to do with that? Because to go out and do something also takes money. Right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna go vacation, if you're gonna go camping, if you're gonna go visit family, get in the car and drive somewhere, that's gonna take money.
Right.
So what is it? I don't know. It just blows my mind.
For me, you're right. It is an issue that I think the whole culture and society is trying to figure out. Where is that balance of work and rec? And I think for me, it's how productive are you being in that time that you're given to work? In that Monday through Friday, if that's your work schedule, are you being extremely productive and making sure you're giving all that you got? So then when it's time to rest and recreate, then you can appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's my perspective.
Have you
but
guys-
I get what you're saying. If you're going to have a time of rest and relaxation, do something with it where you're being refreshed, not just sitting there and zoning out on Netflix,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, anyways, the U.S. has 11 holidays. Do you know what the number one? I looked it up according to Wikipedia. So everything's right on the internet. There's no fallacies there or inaccuracies. Do you know what the number one country is with the most holidays?
I bet you it's not a country in Asia. That's for sure.
India.
Really?
India has
the
number one.
most holidays?
Yeah,
I would have never
India.
guessed that.
I love it.
Guess how many? So the U.S. has 11. Guess how many India has?
35.
The maximum number, 42.
Okay.
They have 42 holidays.
Nepal has 35.
Probably because they work weekends as well. They're forced to work weekends. So that's their total
That's the
number
total
of
days off. That's
Yeah.
the total days off. But yeah.
You're doing it right.
They don't
man.
get vacations.
Yeah. I love it. Let's bring it.
Germany has 13. Poland has 13. New Zealand has 12. France has 11. Israel has 11.
I have so much unused sick and vacation time. I can't. It's hard for me to take a day off. I'm like you. Like if I want to take a day off, I have to do so much extra work in order to have a day off.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway,
I had to come in I took Monday off. I had to come in on Sunday night to allow myself to take Monday off.
Well, there you go. Everybody's built a little different. And I get that. There's probably not a universal solution to
Right.
this. But what fires me up about the whole topic is, have you ever Googled the death clock?
I've seen that.
You have?
That was scary.
Yeah. So I looked it up the other day, and it says I'm going to live to be 86 years, 3 months, and 21 days old. My death day, let's see if it has it on here, is January 10th, 2075. And so with that frame of reference, like, what am I going to do on my days off? Do I want to make the most of that time with my family and friends, or
Yeah.
You better catch up on Netflix.
my God.
Right,
Your
exactly.
Time is
It's a good point.
limited. Your time is limited.
It's a very interesting tool. And I noticed, because I was here when you took that little test, that one of the key factors that extends your lifespan is your attitude or your
Optimism.
perspective on life. Yeah. Are you a pessimistic? Are you a realistic? Or are you an optimistic person? And if you're an optimist, it really has a big effect on your life. You live
Yeah.
much longer if you're an optimistic person.
yeah,
and if you're a mall walker, I just
Right.
And a mall worker, yeah,
You walk the
that was
malls,
a subfield.
right.
Yeah. So I put it in there as like a heavy drinker, heavy smoker. It may have me live until 66. And then heavy drinker with a neutral outlook, heavy drinker, heavy smoker, which I'm not either of those things, but heavy drinker, heavy smoker with a positive outlook just to see and it gave me an extra 15 years.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Just did not have anything to do with diet, exercise, mall walking. It just had to do with my perspective on life. And so, anyways, interesting stuff. But what does this have to do with appraisals? We have Ryan Lundquist here in the studio with us today, appraiser extraordinaire. And the answer is absolutely nothing. It has nothing to do with it. But we were talking about people who were, or companies who, like hedge funds, who are buying up properties. Are they having a significant impact on the market? No. We were talking about cash buyers. Are cash buyers the ones purchasing everything? Slight uptick, right? Ryan, you said about a 5% increase. Correct. On average. Mm-hmm. And then the other question that I'm getting all the time from buyers and sellers is, what about the Bay Area buyers? What are they still the ones coming over in droves and just they're selling a house that's a fraction the size of the ones here in Sacramento for many multiples of that amount? What are you seeing? Are the Bay Area buyers still a thing?
They're definitely still a thing. It's just not the 2021 thing, right? And so that was peak migration. And you think about, people having incentive to move, when mortgage rates were below 3%, yep. Money was so cheap to borrow. And so you have this massive influx of people coming to town, and it's just not that vibe anymore. And so we see, I think, in a lot of markets and even in the state of California, where migration has really changed, where, yes, it's still happening. People are leaving the state. People are coming to the state, just not at 2021 levels. And I think for locals, I just say, be really careful about expecting that Bay Area unicorn to swoop in and, pay, $200,000 over, what's reasonable.
Yeah.
And so I find that the danger when we talk about the Bay, even though they are a factor, they're absolutely Bay Area buyers. I think that there's that expectation that someone's going to overpay. And, that's just more fiction than reality.
Correct. Yeah. They're smart. They're human beings, right? They have access to data and appraisers. Why would they want to overpay? So a lot of people, I compare the Bay Area buyer moving to Sacramento to the Sacramentoan moving out of state, right? Because they can get more for their money in Tennessee, Carolinas, Florida, Texas. Now, so if you're making that move or you're considering making that move, are you going to want to overpay in Tennessee? Are you going to want to overpay in Texas? No. You don't want to overpay. You want to pay what the home's worth. So those people moving from the Bay are not willing to overpay, but they are oftentimes qualified buyers. Like they have the means to purchase your home.
Absolutely.
So when you're talking about the peak migration in 2021 versus now, can you provide some insight as to what that difference looks like between peak and now?
Well, I mean, technically, migration stats aren't even out for all of 2023. It takes forever for stats to come out. It's almost like you're in the midst of a trend. You just don't see the numbers yet. And so, but I mean, everything I've seen from, say, the Public Policy Institute of California, I mean, it's just, I can picture the bar graph in my mind right now. It's definitely not what it was. And I think word on the street locally, when you're talking to people who's buying, who's selling, there's just less of that. And anecdotally, when I log on to Facebook or anywhere where I'm talking to real estate, I probably speak somewhere once a week. No one is telling me it's all the Bay. And yeah. I think that was the dominant narrative in years like, later 2020 and 2021, some of 2022. And I'm not hearing that hardly at all, but it is still a factor. There are still investors. I talk to builders. There are buyers, paying cash. There are Bay Area buyers parking money in Sacramento, or just outright moving. And so it does happen. It's just, I think everything, stats and, the ones we're waiting for, the ones we have, the anecdotes, it's just not as much of an issue.
Yeah. So, I mean, tell me if this would be at a correct-ish figure. What I tell people all the time is, hey, I want a Bay Area buyer. Great. We have a Bay Area buyer marketing plan. Where through geo-targeting or geofencing and retargeting, we're able to identify those people and promote your home to them. But just so we're operating in reality here, that's about 15% or so of the buyer population. Is that historically what it's been?
It's hard to put a number on it. I would be very surprised if it was more than that, though.
Okay.
There's just not a easy way to quantify that with all the stats that are out there. But I would be shocked if it was more than that, though.
Cool. Okay, yeah. So if you'd like a copy of the Bay Area Buyer Marketing Plan, or if you'd like to learn more about how we do that, just go ahead and reach out, give us a call, shoot us a text at 530-GET-MORE. That's 530-GET-MORE. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the good and the bad news that's happening right now in the real estate market.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
Before the break, we were talking about Bay Area buyers and how there are a lot of Bay Area buyers coming from, moving to the Sacramento region, but they are not like the driving force in the market. And that got me thinking about a Bay Area buyer, Full House. Did you guys watch that show growing up?
Oh, absolutely. Uncle Jesse.
Definitely.
Danny Tanner, Uncle Joey, Michelle, Stephanie,
oh my gosh.
DJ Tanner. Come on.
I barely know the name of the show. I didn't. It looks funny.
We were huge. We watched it in the reruns. We'd watch it every afternoon. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was a huge show.
So that's what you would do on your day offs?
Watch Full House.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
it was a great, wholesome show for the whole family. It was really good.
Everybody could giggle about it and have a good time. Well, I guess the house was recently listed for $6.5 million.
Bargain.
It's a bargain. And this article, it's on Realtor.com, talks about how would a news person, what did Tanner do? He was a morning news anchor?
He was a morning news anchor, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Good Day San Francisco, I think it was called. Good Morning San Francisco.
And how would he be able to afford the home? Because even back then, on a $50,000 salary, there's no way you're buying a house.
It was a hit TV show. Plus, he had Uncle Jesse and Uncle Joey who had to contribute to the mortgage.
That's true. He was Airbnb-ing those rooms out.
They lived there for a reason because he couldn't afford. Can I say this though?
Yeah.
In 1998, the median price in San Francisco was just below $300,000. Now it's more like 1.6 to 1.7 million. But this show 10 years prior during the MC Hammer days, it was surely lower than
that's a good point.
In the article, it says in 1990. When Full House aired, the home had a price tag of
$725,000. Yeah, that would have been a lot for back then. I'm curious, does it say how many square feet it is? How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? Does it give the description?
No, I can find that, but it doesn't talk about
it. What did you say the price is?
Today, $6.5 million.
So it's for sale for $6.5 million.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. The thing you have to consider about that is you're going to have a lot of tourists coming to your front porch, wanting to take a picture, knocking on the door. Hey, is Uncle Jesse here? You're gonna have to deal with that a lot. So I don't know.
No, it's an issue. I know there's a Brandon with Bigger Pockets, an investment website. He once bought a house that Kurt Cobain was his first house when he was a baby. And then his tenants would start complaining and be like, hey, there's people coming over and taking photos at all times of the night, because you'd have these tour buses from Sweden or something like Cobain's house. And so it was interesting because you buy a house, it was a duplex, it comes with some baggage, it comes with some looky-loos. And so you just got to kind of be aware, you got to be comfortable with that. It's going to take the right type of person.
Here's what I would do. If I had the money to purchase this house, I would create a tourist attraction. I would redo the home as much as I could that looked like the interior of the show and charge tickets. Create it into a business if you're allowed to do that.
If zoning allowed.
If zoning allowed.
That's always the thing. But I would step back and say you could buy literally almost anything in the Sacramento region. Our highest price ever is $7 million. There was a Shingle Springs property, or there was a property in Loomis, maybe two that sold at $7 million. And so, you could buy literally almost anything that's ever sold in Sacramento for that price, or the Full House. Wah, wah,
I don't know. That's debatable.
So anyways,
there was Eddie Murphy's house as well. How much did that go for? $20 million?
No. I think in its heyday, maybe it sold for, what was it? $6 million.
Oh, really?
Then it sold again for less. And it's actually, that one I think will be hitting the market at some point. It's got some baggage that I'm not sure we should talk about here. So.
We don't want to disclose it. But so assuming today's mortgage rate, roughly let's say about a 6.99%, 7% interest rate, 20% down, and a 1.7 tax. So everything all lumped in with a purchase price of $6.5 million. You'd have to, the mortgage payment with taxes, insurance, and everything, about $44,000 a month. So you'd have to be knocking down a few appraisals to be able to...
just a few, yeah.
I'm curious who would buy that home. Because like you said, it does come with a lot of baggage. You're going to have to deal with a lot of traffic. So I don't know who would find that house appealing. Would have that kind of money.
They probably jacked it up. It's probably not going to go for 6.5. It'll probably go for less, That's my thought. This is a a get attention type of home.
And for some people that does it where they're like, man, I this bragging rights, I own this house, like if Dave Grohl owned something in Sacramento from the Foo Fighters, I'd be like, I'd love to own that house.
You know what I found out recently? I have not verified this, but supposedly Dick Cheney had a house in Los Lagos. Oh. I did not know this. I don't know if he still does or if the family owns it or whatever, but I was like, that's interesting.
Also, staying alive, John Travolta had a home here.
Really?
Yeah, right?
Did he? I don't know.
Yeah, John Travolta flew out of here, yeah.
He was in the movie in the 90s in Auburn, I know that. So.
That's why he's done a couple movies actually here locally. And part of it was because I think he either had family here or maybe his wife had family here. So he had a house up there in Granite Bay area. Yeah.
So now that Leonardo DiCaprio's shooting a movie over here, maybe he's going to buy a house?
Right. No, I don't think we want that.
We don't want him?
We don't want Leonardo DiCaprio type of celebrity. John Travolta, Eddie Murphy, we're okay with that.
Yeah. I would not want to be Dick Cheney's neighbor. He might shoot me. That's all I know.
I didn't know we got political on this show.
I was thinking of a shotgun joke, but I was like, I shouldn't say it. But I'm glad you did. Thank you.
I'm not afraid. We're good. We're good. So the reason why we have Ryan on the show today is he is the go-to guy that appraisers go to. He's the go-to guy that realtors go to when they want to have conversations about market stats and just figure out like specific hard to appraise homes. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about the good and the bad of what he's seeing in the real estate market right now. So what are you seeing? Let's start with the good. What are you seeing good?
So I'd say the good news is that we're no longer at 2023 lows. And so we had sort of the worst, number of sales ever last year. And this year we've seen a little bit more new listings. So sellers aren't quite as stuck as they were last year, and more pending contracts, which is good. That's exactly what we want to see. More buyers and sellers participate in the market. Yeah. And I think, that's the positive part. And then if we switched over and gone, well, what's, negative about that? Well, I'd say that, we're in a place where a lot of people are still stuck. And it's kind of like we can look at last year and go, yeah, it was the worst year ever in many decades, at least for volume. And this year is the second worst year on record. Yeah. And so, we're really subdued. But in practical terms, think about it this way. This year, the positive news, we've had about 2,000 more new listings hit the regional market January through May. Okay, but that's down about 5,000 from the normal number we would have seen hit the market. And so we're still nowhere close to normal. But what happens is that, with those 2,000 more listings, it changes the dynamic in the market. It's not quite as tight. And so what we've seen today, there's a wider gap between the number of sales and the number of active properties. And so the temperature is not as extremely hot. And so the sellers just really need to watch that. Need to be priced right. About 36% of the market has price reductions right now. And,
So almost 1 in 3 homes.
Oh, yeah, a little bit more than 1 in 3. And, really for the rest of the year, we should see price reductions increase. That's what happens in a normal seasonal pattern. But price reductions are a little bit higher than usual. And that speaks to, I think, sellers sort of, being out of touch, being like, hey, you got to be in touch with the climate of buyers. I always tell sellers, like, hey, go to Mortgage Calculator, see what it costs to buy your house. It's probably not going to be $44,000 like the full house home, but
sure.
But it's a lot more than a lot of people think, and buyers are very picky about condition, price, and location, and hands down. And so buyers are patient too. They'll be like, "Hey, I'm not going to pull the trigger on that one." To throw in Dick Cheney again. No, just kidding.
Oh, gosh, pull the trigger.
Yeah.
So, but to your point, what I'm seeing is a lot of sellers they need to net more out of the home because they're either going to stay local and now have a mortgage payment with a 6-7% interest rate on it, or they're retiring out of state and they need every penny. This home is what all of their retirement funds are tied up in. And so they do like to try and sometimes test the market a little higher, but the market just is not having it right now.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with testing the market, but there's that point where you have to listen to go, okay, I put this on Craigslist, no one's buying it, I better lower the price. And the same thing happens in real estate, to be realistic. And I think for sellers, prices on a regional level are down about 3 to 4% from the very peak in mid-May 2022. Mm-hmm. Okay, they're up from last year, and so we're actually not very far from those peak prices that we had when mortgage rates were below 3%. And so I think sellers just need to kind of look at that, and in some cases choose not to be greedy also, and just go, here's what the market's willing to pay. the market doesn't care what sellers need. The market only cares, or representative buyers, of what buyers are willing to pay. That's the only thing that matters.
Do you still think there's some pent-up demand because of these interest rates and just lack of inventory?
Absolutely. I think we're in a market where the math just doesn't work for a lot of people. And so that's why we're missing about 35% or so of the normal number of buyers. Okay. And so it's a weird vibe though today, because you have missing sellers and missing buyers. That's why it's been competitive, because we're missing all these listings. And, absolutely. There's a lot of people who would be participating in real estate right now if the math did work in their favor. There's people who want to move, but it's just not going to work right now. People who want to downsize, people who want to upsize, and people who want to, leave the state, or whatever they're going to do. There's lots of reasons. And so, one thing I will say is that I've seen in the stats that 55 plus communities have done a little bit better.
Really?
Sun City, Roseville, Sun City, Lincoln, their volume has been pretty strong this year so far. And I think, that speaks to sort of lifestyle moves, where buyers are like, hey, it's time to downsize. How much time do I have left? And, or buyers who are of an older demographic who would say, I just want to move closer to family. My time is limited. I check death clock. And,
oh, gosh.
I only have a little bit left. And so I think that, a lot of people just look at their life and go, where do I want to be? And, maybe now's not the optimal time, with math, but, I'm going to move to Nevada County, or I want to be in Grass Valley, or whatever it is. And, people should do whatever they want to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got to keep your finger on that death clock. But when we come back, by the way, before we break, if you are thinking about buying a house, or even maybe thinking about selling as well, and you're like, man, those interest rates are just killing me, and you would like to get an interest rate that's 1%, 2%, 3% below what you're seeing on the websites when you look up the mortgage calculators, or maybe when you're reading the news or listening to the news, go ahead and give us a call. Shoot us a text at 530-GET-MORE. That's 530-GET-MORE, and we can help you get a lower interest rate, get you into the home, and help you start accruing equity while everybody's sitting on the fence. Back after this.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
So off the air, I had this question, guys. Very important, deep, philosophical question.
Let's go there.
What is eye candy?
That's interesting, because when I was talking with your wife, that's what she said. The reason why she married you is you were eye candy.
It was a dimly lit room that
right,
night. Yeah.
Exactly.
When you hot, you hot.
When you hot,
right.
you hot. You're not far from good, but no, good from far, but far from good.
There you go. Would you want to be considered eye candy if somebody said, "Ooh, Johnny Jennings is some eye candy"?
No, that just makes me wholly uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people think that, if you're considered eye candy, that's it. You're pretty to look at, but there's not a whole lot there underneath.
Yeah. You have the definition pulled up, Ryan? Like what was it that they were saying?
It was kind of like that. A person or people considered highly attractive to look at, often with the implication that they are lacking in intelligence or depth.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily a compliment.
Got it. But so moving aside from like the more traditional definition, like an eye candy thing for me are cigars. Like you send me some cigar pictures, I'm like, ooh, I want to look at that.
Right, that's true.
Some of that.
Right.
What's some eye candy for you, Ryan?
I don't know. I'm just laughing. Well, I would say maybe watching skaters on Instagram, where it's like, how much time do I spend watching? Do
you still skate?
I do on vacation, and we got a Tahoe trip coming up.
Skateboards?
Yeah. I make skateboards.
You do?
Longboards, yeah.
Wow.
And so just kind of a hobby. I haven't made one for a while, but I really need to do something this summer when the contractors get
Can I ask how old you are?
I'll be 48 in October.
Okay, so you're younger than Tony Hawk, right?
Yeah.
I think Tony Hawk's in his 50s.
I think he's 56.
There you go. Wow. So
you think he's 56? That was a very specific guess.
Well, I saw
his birthday's in 3 weeks.
I look at Ryan here, his age, and obviously he probably grew up following Tony Hawk.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Even my son, who's 10 years old, knows who Tony Hawk is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just this prolific skateboard. He basically made skateboarding popular.
Yeah, no, he's
just so interesting.
He's
some eye candy, if you want to call it.
He's an eye candy skateboarder.
No, I would say he's substance, man.
Yeah,
he's substance.
I love how passionate Ryan.
No. This guy.
Don't even call him eye candy.
No.
He's got substance.
He gets some hate because I think whenever you're on top, and he made so many millions over his video game, which I never played because I don't
They
do video
even had
games.
a roller coaster ride at Six Flags named after him.
But the guy is like he's done so much for the sport with building skate parks through his foundation all across the country and I think even the world. But just phenomenal guy.
Why does he get flack?
Well, I think whenever you're on top, you get flack. You don't have haters, unless you're successful, right? No one hates on someone who's not doing anything with their life. I think that's a lot
not
of it,
entirely
maybe jealousy.
true. Siblings hate. You don't have to be on top,
Okay.
but siblings will hate.
Wow.
There you go.
Sounds like Johnny has some personal experience to talk about.
I'm just saying brothers and sisters fight, Give me that back. That's mine.
That's true.
He was
of course.
real quick to give you that response.
Yeah, that came from the heart.
Oh, gosh. Sorry, family.
We won't go there.
Yeah, we won't go there. But speaking of, so you got the hobby of woodworking, and you also are collecting signs, right? Like neon signs?
Yeah.
Would you say collecting?
I wouldn't say collecting,
Okay.
but I do have sort of an eclectic man cave in my garage now with a pool table. And it's been
man.
it's been a little nuts over the past year where I'm like, okay, when I calculate all my receipts at the end of the year, my wife's going to be surprised.
That's not a tax write-off?
Oh, it is. That's why.
How is
yeah.
it a tax write-off?
Hey man, I have clients over. I'm this Saturday.
It's
I'm
an office. Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm actually I do have a home office right next to it, in part of the garage. But I have people over all the time.
You use it for entertaining.
I do open invites to anyone, and so over the last few months, a few times, and even this weekend, I'm having a bunch of people over.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you have a skate ramp in your backyard?
I don't know.
He does have a pool table, though, right?
So, pool table in the garage. Yeah. No, that would be bad if I should not be doing that. So
not at 48.
No. But when I go on vacation, I ride my longboard. I would like to ride it more, but I just a couple years ago, I videotaped myself doing a kickflip, and then my back was like,
oh man,
so
crunched.
That's crazy.
I got it, and then I'm like, okay, I think I'm good. So.
Cool. So, but talking about eye candy, that went down a long rabbit hole. But trail, assumable mortgages are a bit of, you were saying eye candy, Ryan.
Correct. Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the idea, an assumable mortgage is a mortgage that has a really low rate that a buyer can take over that mortgage, basically. And so it's an FHA or a VA mortgage. And right now, the idea of taking over a 2.5% rate, the savings can be dramatic, but I call it eye candy also just because the idea is so attractive, but they're also really difficult to pull off.
Yeah.
Right now, I think in our marketplace, there's a place for these. Like, they are happening more frequently, but the problem is that the buyer today has to pay any difference between, the loan and what the property sells for.
Yep.
But it requires a perfect storm, or the right seller, the right buyer, and the right loan servicer. So the buyer and seller might agree, but the loan servicer might take 4 months to, approve this transaction. On average, properties took from the time they listed to the time they closed 120 days for the loan assumptions.
Wow.
And so it's just like, not every seller is going to wait that time. Or you list your home and then you say, why do you say yes to the assumable mortgage when you have 2 other buyers on the hook who can close in 21 days or whatever? And so it's an uphill battle, but someone will crack the code, figure this out more. If they can get an efficient process down, imagine how many of these can go through, and imagine a premium that people would pay for a lower mortgage.
Yep.
But we're just not there right now. I think they're more arduous, and they're just going to take longer, and there's this uncertainty about can it actually happen or not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is new to me. So can you explain a scenario of how this works?
So imagine someone bought a home in 2021 with FHA financing, and they paid $600,000. Okay. Now imagine it's worth $650,000 today, and that mortgage though has a 2.5% rate. And instead of having a 7% rate today, the buyer today can go through this assumption process where they would take over that mortgage, and whatever it would be, probably $580,000 total. But they have to make up that $70,000 difference today in cash, or if the lender allows a different type of loan, that's fine. But they can take over and have that loan be their loan today. And so, imagine if that worked, the profound savings.
Sure.
Yeah. And so the idea is awesome,
What's the upside for the seller? Why would that? Is there an upside for the seller?
The seller nets what the seller nets. It doesn't really do anything for the seller unless that seller doesn't have many buyers.
Right.
And, I think a lot of this could probably work a little bit better off market when the seller's really patient or trying to sell to a friend or whatever. There's scenarios where this works. It is happening more frequently. In my market talks, I often ask people, hey, raise your hand if you've done a loan assumption. And I've learned to ask, raise your hand if you've done one successfully. Yeah. There's a real difference because people are like, yeah, bro, I did one. And I'm like, well, wait, was it successful though? But I'm seeing more hands go up. So I'd say this is a small and growing trend, but it's a tiny trend. We got to be careful not to hype it up too much. But this is sort of like we've got to get more creative when affordability is a struggle. And I think that's where we look in a market when the numbers don't, math isn't mathing in a lot of cases.
The people that I see typically doing it, Matt, are the ones who have time and resources. So think investors, like a realtor friend of ours, she just bought a property in Hawaii. This is a real estate agent, very successful, very experienced. Both the seller and her as the buyer wanted to complete this assumable loan process over 5 months for her to see this through. The bank did not want to approve it because they'd rather write you a loan for 7%.
Right.
A new loan for 7%.
So that's interesting to me why banks are allowing this to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's built into the loan product. This is allowed to happen, but, the vast bulk of loans, say locally, about 15% of loans are FHA and VA. And so think that, a huge chunk of the properties that were purchased don't even qualify, conventional financing, but there also aren't very many people who are selling who have a low rate. And so it's sort of like this idea, I'm going to go buy a foreclosure. And it's like, well, that's possible, but it's also difficult to pull off because there's just not that many properties. It's not
relevant to a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, but there's sort of tech companies rising up and who are, trying to, run with this and identify properties that, are good candidates. And of course, they want money from the buyer. I've heard, 1%. There's a flat fee company that's coming. I think that will only be $750, which would be a great asset to the agents if that's the case, but because that's actually affordable. I think 1% to me, I'm like, really? What did you do, though?
Oh, gosh, now you're acting like people talking about real estate agents. What did you do? What did you do for the 2.5%, 3%, X%?
Sounded like Johnny's siblings.
But throw an extra 1% in that transaction where there's already the real estate fees. To me, it sounds inflated, but I don't get to decide. What I think doesn't matter. The market gets to figure this out. If the market wants this product, they'll pay for it.
The market should ask you, Ryan. The market, what you say matters.
Okay. Well, that's my opinion then, John.
All right. Well, speaking of your opinion on the market, you were saying that it looks like the market may have peaked a little bit earlier this year.
Yeah, so we definitely peaked in, I would say, late April technically, where we hit, the hottest portion of the market, and then we're starting to cool off. And it's not like the market's at zero right now. Yeah. The brakes were slammed, and then, nothing's happening. It's more like the gas pedal gets let off, and then people start thinking about vacations and graduations, and there's starting to be less activity. So the percentage of multiple offers, instead of 57%, it's 50% right now. And so there's that subtle change where you notice, and it's really around this time of year, almost every year, this is kind of what happens. The most aggressive part of the market, Super Bowl to about Mother's Day, and then a lot of people think in real estate, though, the summer is the hottest time. And I'm like, yes, the weather, it's still really competitive in a lot of price ranges. So don't, hear that the market's dull. It's just, there's not that, spring vibe, the very peak of demand. We did cross that. I think that's what the stats show.
And you said that it peaked a little bit earlier this year compared to normal?
Maybe slightly, but it's
a couple weeks, a month?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's right there in the pocket. It just felt like maybe we were going to peak a little bit later in May this year, but, that's not happening. And like I said before, the difference in this market, we have a faster pace of the number of listings growing compared to the number of sales. Yeah. And so that sort of changes demand a little bit. And meanwhile, buyers are like, I'm not seeing the listings though. Where are they? It doesn't feel like there's more. And so I get that too, since we're still, missing 5,000 from normal.
It also seems like interest rates played a factor into that, because earlier in the year, it seems like they were going to come down, and the market was kicking off pretty hot, and then they started raising the interest rates, and they kept the interest rates high, and affordability remains to be a challenge for many people, and so definitely think that may have.
I think you're right. I think we're like May kind of lackluster number of sales, and I think that's a reflection of rates showing an uptick in previous time. It just shows how sensitive the market is to rates right now.
So sensitive, so sensitive, and then it tends to taper off, in the summertime, but. I don't know about you, but do you typically see like a resurgence sometime in like late September, October, like the last little like oomph before the market cools off for the rest of the winter?
Yeah. So historically, we see sort of one last rush to the market, sort of a pre-Thanksgiving rush, before you gorge yourself with all the food. Let me gorge myself with real estate. That's kind of how it usually works. But the kids are back into school. There's more of a rhythm in life. I think rhythms disappear sometimes in a lot of ways during the summer because people are gone and, schedules are uncertain. But then I think when you start to get that established pattern again, whether it's with school or work and it's not, 115 degrees outside, there's no smoke, we're not mall walking, all those things, I think the market finds its rhythm also. And so usually there's more sales in December compared to November because you get that rush of buyers, October, November, and then you get more in December. So not always, but that's often sort of a normal dynamic.
What we tell sellers all the time is, hey, if you're thinking about selling in the winter, go ahead and sell, because how motivated of a buyer do you have to be to break up that rhythm that you were talking about, break up the holidays, and consider making a move? Like you're probably more motivated than your typical buyer in the regular season. And the same thing goes for sellers. Like how motivated, if you're thinking about buying a home, how motivated do you think that seller is? If they're willing to hit pause on everything, not have one last Christmas or one last Thanksgiving in the home, what's happening in their life? So sometimes it's a great time to, even though it's out of season, to still make that move.
Yeah, no, and I like that because if someone is on the market, in the fall, that means that they need to sell. And so I'm like, great. Yeah. And if it starts to rain, even better, because then you understand if the gutters and roof and drainage work. I'm like, I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah. So we love we love the rain, because then when the home inspector gets up in there, they can be like, oh, look, there's an active leak. And when in the summertime, you're like, it looks like there might have been a leak. Let's check with the homeowner, make sure they fixed it. But we're not entirely sure because it looks like it used to be up there. But anyways, if you would like to learn more about Ryan Lundquist, just reach out and have him speak at your team meetings. If you're a real estate agent, hire him. Is it probate, and what type of work do you typically do?
Yeah, just a lot of private stuff, divorce, estate planning, litigation, just a ton of stuff.
All the exciting things.
Yeah, all the boring stuff. Oh gosh, yeah. Let me tell you.
Just reach out to us, 530-GET-MORE, 530-GET-MORE, and we can connect you with Ryan. He's a phenomenal dude, smartest in the biz. Thank you so much for being on today.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate being here.
See you.